at hope concept. The first one is that it wasn't risk or trauma that prevents kids from experiencing success, it was the absence of hope. That when we looked at case study after case study of kids who succeeded, it wasn't because we eliminated or mitigated or reduced or prevented the risk from their lives. They actually were experiencing risk. But there was something else that was happening to them that allowed them to overcome that risk. And it was something called hope, and we had to put hope underneath a microscope, and Valerie's going to help us understand that, but it was one of her colleagues that gave us the greatest insight as to understanding the power behind hope and how it can be harnessed. So there was this concept called hope, not as a feeling, but as a strategy. That hope wasn't something that some people were hopeful and some people weren't hopeful, and if you're hopeful, you're luckier than those who weren't hopeful. And it was something that was actually taught and learned. So we began to understand it wasn't risk or trauma that prevented kids from success. It was the absence of hope, because we saw so many kids overcoming great adversity and still becoming successful. So we needed to understand that, put that underneath the microscope. The second one is we, as people who work with children, don't control most of the risk that they experience, but we do control much of the hope. So we don't control they come from dysfunctional families. We don't control that they're in generational poverty. We don't control that they're highly mobile, that dad abandoned the family years ago, that there's drugs or alcoholism in their family, or some type of criminal background or behavior. We don't control so much of what we talk about in children's lives, but we do control much of the hope. We control what goes forward, not what happened yesterday. So that becomes powerful. That empowers us to make a difference in kids' lives versus disempowers us to say, what can we do for these kids? They just come with so many problems. And the answer is you can do a lot. Let's talk about what that can look like instead of giving us reasons not to move forward in support of them. So that was the second finding. The third finding you've heard from Rick and Terry, that hope is taught and learned. You teach hope like you teach reading, writing, math, and science. You teach hope like you teach how to wipe a child's bottom. You teach hope like you drive a car, what shoe goes on the right foot, what shoe goes on the left foot. You teach hope like you teach everything else that children need to be able to navigate life. So the question we have is, who teaches our kids about hope? And can you teach something you don't know? If you don't know math, can you teach a child math? If you don't know science, can you teach a child science? If you don't know what shoe goes on the right foot or what shoe goes on the left foot, can you teach a child what shoe goes on the right foot and what shoe goes on the left foot? If you don't know it, understand it, use it as a strategy. How do you share it with children? So we began to try to understand, are the people that we're surrounding our kids with are hopeful people? If the people we're surrounding our kids to teach them math, do they know math? It became the same understanding. So that was the third finding. The fourth finding, it wasn't curriculum or programs alone that made a difference in children's lives. It was the adult relationships. That for a long time we were looking for the right program and the right curriculum when we should be looking for the right relationships. So now if you become a Kids Hope organization, a Kids Hope school, you begin to look at the relationships, not just the programs kids are enrolled with. You don't put kids in a 6-week program or 6-month program and expect something remarkable to happen. You make sure they have the right relationship that supports whatever the transformation is supposed to occur. So that became a big part of it. So we understood that was essential in terms of moving forward, that if you understood those 4 research findings, those 4 research conclusions, I should say, it wasn't risk that held kids back, was the absence of hope. Hope is taught and learned. We don't control most of the risk children experience. We control much of the hope. And that's not programs or curriculum, it's adult relationships that make the greatest difference. Then what do you do with that? What do you do with that? And what we learned to do with that is we learned that there were 3 things that we all should be able to do together that none of us can do alone. If we're going to create a culture of hope, what is it that we expect everyone to participate in doing that supports the hopefulness of children? What can the village do to help raise an educated child? We said there are 3 things. 3 things we all can do together that makes a profound difference that none of us alone can do for every child, because most of us can't reach every child, but all of us can. All of us can. So what are the 3 things that we need to do? First thing is we need to believe in our kids. We need to believe in our kids. Not believe some of them will do well and some of them won't do well. That wasn't the belief that we needed. That's the belief that continues to exist today. That we believe some kids will do well, some kids may struggle and fall through the cracks, and some kids may eke it out and figure out what it is that they're supposed to do. Maybe not on our timeline, but sooner or later they'll figure that out. But no, let's stop that silliness and let's begin to believe that all kids can succeed, no exceptions. And that's a tough paradigm shift to make, especially when you've been practicing the other. I believe some kids will do well, some kids will struggle, and some kids will fall through the cracks. So believe all kids can succeed, no exceptions. We ask a question on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 strongly disbelieve in that statement, 10 strongly believe. What would you circle? And if you don't circle number 10, why not? And if you don't circle number 10, the why not is because I don't believe all kids are capable of success. I think there are some reasons some kids won't success, and we're back to where we started. And that's not the advanced study and practice of hope. That's the current study and practice of hope. Some kids will do well, some kids will struggle, some kids will fall through the cracks. First thing, believe in kids. Believe what? All kids can succeed, no exceptions. Number 2, connect with kids. Connect with kids. Every kid deserves a meaningful, sustainable relationship with a caring adult. So we go into greater detail as to what that looks like, but that's the simple answer. Connect with kids. Every kid deserves a meaningful, sustainable relationship with a caring adult. And do we know whether that happens or not? So we say track your relationships. If you can track disciplinary referrals and track grades and track test scores and track lots of things, you should be able to track relationships because we need to know our kids are connected. And not just with the usual suspects, with any caring adult. So we train bus drivers and cafeteria people and police officers and probation officers. Any adult that cares about kids should learn about this strategy. So the second one, connect. First one, belief. Second one, connect. Third one, mental time travel. I think our contribution to the field of child and youth development was the introduction of a concept we call mental time travel, which is how the brain processes its future. Kids who can process their future, see their future, are much more hopeful than kids who can't. So we had to work in that realm. What is the brain doing when it's able to forecast its future? And the question is, well, when we talk about a child's future, what are we really talking about? Are we talking about going to college and getting a career? Is that the end of one's future? Or is it much more multidimensional than that? And we added 3 other destinations: home and family, hobbies and recreation, community and service. That the whole child has to be approached. When we ask them to think about their future, we're thinking in 4 dimensions, 4 destinations, rather than just one. Make life a little bit more exciting about what life has in store and how do you prepare for it. So that became the genesis of Kids Hope. 4 research conclusions and what we call 3 universal truths to create a framework to be able to answer the question, what can we do together that we can't do alone? And we believe that answer is captured in this idea we call culture. That's what the culture does, not what a program does. It's what the culture does, all of us, not just one institution does, or one agency does, or one organization does, is what we can do all together. So that's the genesis of Kids Hope. We then believed we were at a point where we needed a little bit more help. ASU helped us on the front end of this work. ASU helped us kind of supporting our work through sponsorships of our institute and other things, and allowing us to use faculty and doing some research with faculty on a case-by-case basis. But we felt we were at a point in time where we needed a lot more support to advance the study of hope and to offer new ideas on how to practice it. And voila, we found a partner with a shared vision and passion for the work. Sometimes people talk about falling in love at first sight. I fell in love at first words when I met Rick Faves, and he said, "We need Sun Devils at Hope." And as soon as he said that, I knew he got it. He got it. It was for all of us, not just some of us. And that became the beginning of discussing what it would look like if we pulled it all together and created this hybrid. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I won't change. Call me tonight. You'll hear the same story from me. We're going to give you about a 15-minute break.